If I could go back to that night, just one night, and undo everything, I would. The flashing lights of the Vegas Strip. The sound of Ethan's laughter mixing with the clink of champagne glasses. The feeling of my heart pounding with excitement and fear. It was supposed to be harmless. It was supposed to stay in Vegas. Instead, it followed us home and tore our lives apart. Before I tell you the full story, I just want to say thank you to all my amazing subscribers for supporting me. Please don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss another story. And if you're new here, subscribe. It truly helps us bring more inspiring, dramatic life experiences like this one to you. Now, let's begin. My name is Lauren Bennett, and at the time, I thought I had a pretty good life. I was 29 years old, married to my college sweetheart, Ethan Bennett, and living in a nice little home just outside of Denver, Colorado. We were the couple everyone thought was solid. Perfect together, they used to say. But what they didn't know was that behind the smiles and holiday cards, things had gotten hard. We fought more than we laughed. Work stress, money worries, and somewhere between careers and bills and routines, the spark between us had dimmed. That's why when Ethan surprised me with a trip to Las Vegas for our 5th wedding anniversary, I thought maybe this was exactly what we needed. Something wild. Something different. A way to feel alive again. The moment we landed, I felt it, the energy. Neon lights buzzing. Music pumping from every corner. People laughing, drinking, shouting. Vegas wasn't just a city. It was a living, breathing thing, and it wrapped its arms around us. We checked into a suite at the Bellagio, one of the nicest hotels Ethan had splurged on. Big fluffy bed, windows overlooking the fountains, bottles of champagne waiting for us. It was magical. And for a little while, it worked. We laughed again. We held hands walking down the strip. We kissed in the elevator like teenagers. That first night, Ethan made a toast over dinner. To us, he said, smiling across the table. And to making memories we'll never forget. I clinked my glass against his, feeling lighter than I had in months. After dinner, we wandered into one of the big casinos. The night blurred into a whirl of flashing lights and ringing slot machines. We played blackjack, lost $100, laughed about it. We drank way too much champagne. And that's when we met them. 2 men, Mason and Chase. They were standing next to us at the roulette table, joking about how bad they were at picking numbers. Tall, confident, laughing easily. They were strangers. Friendly, a little cocky, but charming enough after a few drinks. Ethan was the one who invited them to join us for a round of drinks at the bar. Why not, he said, bumping my shoulder. It's Vegas. I laughed, agreeing, not thinking much of it. Everyone was a little wild in Vegas, right? We talked for hours. They told us they were in town for a bachelor party. We told them we were celebrating 5 years of marriage. Somewhere between the 2nd and 3rd bottle of champagne, things started getting flirty. Not just playful. Not just joking. Flirty. Mason leaned in close when he talked to me. Chase brushed my arm with his hand when he laughed. I felt Ethan's hand resting lightly on my lower back, almost as if he was anchoring me to him. And then Ethan said it. Maybe tonight, he said, voice low and teasing. We stop pretending we're so innocent. I blinked at him. Was he serious? The look in his eyes told me he was. It was a joke. It had to be. Ethan and I had talked about fantasies before in the wouldn't it be crazy kind of way, but it was never real. Never. But that night, something was different. Maybe it was the champagne. Maybe it was the city. Maybe it was the desperate hunger for something more, anything that could break the numbness that had crept into our lives. Ethan leaned in and whispered in my ear, "It's just one night. What happens here, stays here." I laughed nervously. But in my chest, my heart thundered. We were standing on the edge of something. Something dangerous. And in the bright, glittering chaos of Las Vegas, it was far too easy to take one more step forward. One step too many. The elevator ride up to our suite was silent, but the air between us was electric. I leaned against Ethan, feeling his warmth, his heartbeat pounding almost as hard as mine. Mason and Chase stood close, their faces flushed from the alcohol, their eyes glinting with something wild and dangerous. When we got to the door, Ethan fumbled with the keycard. For a second, I thought maybe he would change his mind. Maybe the reality of it would hit, and we would all laugh this off, blame the champagne, and go to bed like a normal couple. But when the door swung open, he stepped aside and invited them in. I hesitated. I looked at Ethan, waiting for a sign, something in his eyes to tell me this was just a joke, that this had gone far enough. But he just smiled, a calm, steady smile. "You're beautiful," he whispered against my ear, his hand tracing down my arm. "I want to see you, happy, alive, free." It didn't feel real. It felt like we were stepping into someone else's life. The four of us spilled into the room, Mason grabbing another bottle of champagne from the minibar. Chase turned on the stereo. Soft, pulsing music filled the space. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling slightly, unsure of what to do next. That's when Ethan came over and knelt in front of me. "Do you trust me?" he asked, his voice low, serious. I nodded, not trusting my own voice. "Then trust that I want this. I want to watch you. To see you light up again." It was crazy. It was insane. But somewhere deep inside me, a part of me that had been asleep for a long, long time, stirred awake. I had spent years being the good wife, safe, predictable. Maybe for once I could be wild. Mason sat down next to me, his hand brushing my thigh. Chase stood behind me, close enough that I could feel the heat of his body. Ethan leaned back against the dresser, sipping his drink, his eyes locked on me. Watching, waiting. I closed my eyes for a second, letting go of everything, the fear, the guilt, the questions. When I opened them, I was someone new. The night unraveled in flashes. Laughter, touches, kisses that didn't belong to my husband. At first, it was slow, hesitant. But then it spun faster, hotter, out of control. I caught glimpses of Ethan's face across the room, smiling, encouraging, yet strangely distant. Almost like he wasn't really there. At one point, I remember Mason whispering something into my ear, something filthy, something thrilling. I remember Chase lifting me up in his arms like I weighed nothing. I remember the sound of my own laughter, breathless, disbelieving, and Ethan's low groan from the corner. I thought I could handle it. I thought it was just one night. I thought I could step back into my old life afterward and close the door on this Vegas fantasy. But I was wrong. So wrong. Because somewhere between the champagne bubbles and the silk sheets, something broke. Something between me and Ethan. Something we could never put back together. And worse, the two strangers we trusted for one night of fantasy, they didn't leave quietly. No, they had plans of their own. And Vegas wasn't done with us yet. I woke up to the pounding in my head first. Then the pounding on the door. A deep, steady knock, not the casual kind. The kind that meant trouble. I sat up in the massive hotel bed, disoriented. The sun was blinding through the open curtains, and the heavy scent of perfume and alcohol still clung to the room. Ethan stirred beside me, groaning softly. Mason and Chase were nowhere in sight. "Who's that?" I mumbled, my throat dry and scratchy. Ethan swung his legs over the side of the bed and rubbed his face. "Stay here," he said, voice low and serious. He pulled on his jeans and went to the door. I wrapped the sheet around me, heart racing. When Ethan cracked the door open, two men in black suits pushed their way in, not hotel staff, not security. The taller one, a thick-necked man with cold, dead eyes, looked around the room and sneered. "Where are they?" he barked. Ethan stumbled back. "Who?" "Your friends. Mason, Chase. They owe Mr. Romano a lot of money." The name made my stomach drop. Mr. Romano. Even I knew that name. A Vegas businessman with a reputation darker than the desert nights. "They're not here," Ethan said quickly. They left a while ago. The second man, stockier with a crooked nose, picked up an empty champagne bottle and let it clatter to the floor. You're telling me they used your wife, he said, jerking his thumb toward me without even looking, racked up a massive debt at the tables last night, and just walked away? Left you holding the bag. I felt like I couldn't breathe. We didn't know, Ethan stammered. We thought it was just fun. Just a party. The tall man laughed, but there was no humor in it. Welcome to Vegas, buddy. They handed Ethan a slip of paper. It was a bill, but not from the hotel. Gambling debts. Tens of thousands of dollars. My mouth fell open. This has to be a mistake, I said, my voice cracking. We didn't gamble anything. The stocky man smiled at me, a slow, mean smile. No, sweetheart. You were the entertainment. They were the players. I wanted to be sick. You've got 48 hours, the tall one said, slapping Ethan on the back hard enough to make him stumble. Pay up, or Mr. Romano will collect a different way. Then they were gone, leaving the door swinging open and the slip of paper fluttering in Ethan's hand. We sat there for a long time, staring at each other. The fantasy, the wild, intoxicating night, shattered around us like broken glass. We have to call the police, I said finally, my voice shaking. Ethan shook his head. You don't call the police on people like Romano, he said bitterly. It'll only make it worse. I wrapped the sheet tighter around me, feeling suddenly exposed, humiliated, terrified. How much money do we even have? I whispered. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Not enough. Maybe if we sell the car, max out the credit cards. They're not going to wait for that, I said. They said 48 hours. The clock on the nightstand ticked loudly, each second a drumbeat in my ears. We were trapped. Scammed. And it was all because we chased some stupid, reckless fantasy. That night, we didn't go out. We didn't laugh or drink or gamble. We sat in the dark, waiting for a plan that didn't exist. But the thing about Vegas is, you can never outplay the house. Especially when the house plays dirty. And when the second knock came, it wasn't at the door this time. It was at the window. 3 stories up. The knock at the window was soft, almost polite. But in the heavy silence of the hotel room, it sounded like a gunshot. I froze. Ethan shot up from the bed so fast he nearly tripped over the sheets. 3 stories up, he whispered, as if saying it out loud made it less real. Nobody should be able to knock from there. But someone had. We crept toward the window, hearts pounding, the dry desert air leaking in through a crack. Outside, dangling casually from a rope harness, was a man dressed all in black. Dark sunglasses, a smirk that made my blood run cold. He tapped the glass again, this time with the tip of a knife. Let him in, I said, voice trembling. If we don't, he'll break the glass. Or worse. Ethan hesitated, then unlocked the window. The man swung himself in with frightening ease, landing silently like a cat. Good evening, lovebirds, he said, dusting off his sleeves. Name's Rafe. I'm here to offer you an opportunity. Ethan and I exchanged a terrified glance. An opportunity for what? Ethan croaked. Rafe grinned. To wipe your little debt clean. Quick, easy, painless, mostly. He tossed a small black envelope onto the bed. Inside was a single photo. It showed a man, late 60s, expensive suit, standing in front of a glittering casino. That's Mr. Donovan, Rafe said. Romano's rival. Very rich, very arrogant, very vulnerable. He leaned closer, his breath smelling faintly of mint and menace. All you have to do is get into his private suite tonight. Find the silver briefcase. Bring it to me. Simple. I stared at the photo, my hands shaking. Why us? I asked. We're not criminals. We're not spies. Rafe chuckled. Exactly. You're tourists. No one will suspect a thing. That's why you were chosen. Ethan opened his mouth to protest, but Rafe pulled out a sleek pistol and set it lightly on the dresser. Or you can refuse, he said. And I'll make sure Mr. Romano collects his debt from your fingers and toes first. Silence. The air felt too thin to breathe. Fine, Ethan said hoarsely. We'll do it. Rafe nodded, satisfied. Good choice. You've got until sunrise. Don't mess it up. With that, he climbed back out the window, disappearing into the neon-lit darkness like a phantom. We spent the next hour coming up with a plan, if you could even call it that. We changed into the nicest clothes we had left. Me, in a tight black dress. Ethan, in a crisp shirt and slacks. Tourists trying to look like high rollers. The casino floor was a dizzying sea of noise, slot machines chiming, glasses clinking, laughter rising and falling like waves. We walked straight through it, keeping our heads high, our steps steady. At the elevators, we flashed the fake VIP badges Rafe had left for us. Nobody questioned us. It was almost too easy. Mr. Donovan's suite was at the very top floor. Gold-plated doors. A private guard half asleep at his post. Ethan and I exchanged one last look. Act drunk, I whispered. Flirty. Harmless. We stumbled toward the guard, laughing loudly. Oh, wrong floor. I giggled, grabbing Ethan's arm. The guard barely glanced at us. Downstairs, lovebirds, he muttered. We apologized profusely, bumping into him, accidentally knocking his keycard out of his pocket. I scooped it up and slipped it into my clutch without missing a beat. Once we were back in the elevator, my hands were shaking so badly I dropped the clutch twice. You did great, Ethan whispered. Almost there. The keycard worked. Inside Donovan's suite, everything smelled like cigars and money. We found the silver briefcase almost immediately, tucked behind a bar stocked with crystal decanters. Grab it, I hissed. Ethan snatched it up, and that's when we heard it. A soft click. We turned to see Mr. Donovan himself, standing in the doorway, a pistol pointed straight at us. I suggest you put that down, he said coolly. My blood turned to ice. We were caught. Dead caught. For a second, maybe less. Time stood still. Ethan clutched the silver briefcase like it might somehow shield him from a bullet. I stared at Mr. Donovan, trying to think, trying to breathe. Drop it, he said, voice calm but deadly. Ethan slowly bent down, setting the briefcase on the floor. Now kick it toward me, Donovan ordered. Ethan did, the metal scraping loudly across the marble tile. Donovan caught it with the toe of his expensive shoe, never taking his eyes or the gun off us. Who sent you? He asked. We said nothing, because what could we say? Some shady guy hanging from a rope knocked on our window and told us to rob you? Even we wouldn't believe it if we heard it. Donovan sighed like a disappointed teacher. You know what I hate more than thieves? He said, almost conversationally. Amateurs. He cocked the gun. And that's when the door behind him burst open. Rafe. In a flash, Rafe tackled Donovan to the ground, the gun clattering across the floor. Run. Rafe barked at us. But we stood there, frozen, as the two men fought like wild animals, fists flying, grunts and curses filling the air. Finally, Donovan landed a brutal punch to Rafe's jaw, sending him sprawling. He grabbed the gun. Without thinking, I grabbed a heavy lamp and swung it with all the strength I had. Crash. The lamp shattered against Donovan's head. He went down hard, unconscious. The room spun around me. I was gasping for air. Rafe sat up, wiping blood from his mouth. Nice swing, he muttered, half smiling. Then he grabbed the briefcase, tossing it to me. Change of plans, he said. You're coming with me. I should have said no. I should have run screaming in the opposite direction. But I was too deep now. We both were. Ethan grabbed my hand. Together, we followed Rafe down a back stairwell, sprinting through service halls and kitchens, bursting out into the blinding neon chaos of the strip. Rafe led us to a black SUV idling in a side alley. He threw open the door. Get in. We dove inside. Tires screeched as the driver peeled away from the curb, vanishing into the labyrinth of Vegas backstreets. I clutched the briefcase to my chest, heart slamming against my ribs. Where are we going? Ethan panted. Rafe gave us a sideways grin. Somewhere safe. You did good tonight. Real good. He leaned back, relaxing. You two ever think about doing this for a living? I stared at him in horror. Was he serious? No, Ethan said firmly. Suit yourselves, Rafe chuckled. Then he turned serious. But listen, Romano's not the only one who's gonna be looking for you now. Donovan's people, they don't forget. You're gonna need to lay low for a while. Maybe a long while. Lay low? Our lives, the normal, boring ones, were over. Just like that. We had come to Vegas for a little adventure. A little spice. We got more than we ever bargained for. Way more. And as we sped through the glittering city, the briefcase heavy in my arms and Ethan's hand clutched tightly in mine, I realized something terrifying. The real gamble wasn't what we had just done. It was everything that was still coming. Because some fantasies, they don't just go wrong. They change you forever. It's been almost a year since Vegas. A year since we ran. A year since I last slept through the night without waking up in a cold sweat, thinking I hear someone outside the window. We didn't go back to Chicago. We couldn't. Instead, Ethan and I changed everything: new names, new IDs, new lives in a sleepy coastal town where no one asks too many questions. The briefcase? Gone. We sold most of what was inside through quiet channels, just enough to buy freedom, not fortune. Anything more would have been dangerous. Sometimes I catch Ethan staring off into the distance, like he's still back there, in that glittering tower suite, standing at the edge of a cliff we didn't even know we were on. I wonder if he regrets it. I wonder if I do. The truth is, I'm not sure. We were reckless, stupid, selfish. But also, for the first time alive, Vegas tore away everything fake between us. It showed me who Ethan really was. And maybe it showed him who I am, too. We're not innocent anymore. But we're still together. Still surviving. Still choosing each other, even in a